Guys, wouldn't your wife or girlfriend love it if you treated her to the very best this Christmas? Now you can, with the world's softest pajamas by Pajamagram. Created by a team of pajama experts, the world's softest PJs are lighter than a cloud, softer than a bunny, like cashmere, only better. She'll love how heavenly they feel. Includes free gift packaging and Christmas delivery is guaranteed. So visit pajamagram.com or call 1-800-GIVE-PJs.
This is the Locker Room Podcast.
This is the Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. Guest appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Tweet us at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Geoff Schwartz, Geoff with a G, at Barrett A. Jones. You can also call us. We'd love to hear from you. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. I am Geoff Schwartz, 8-year NFL offensive lineman. I am with Barrett Jones, fellow offensive lineman, 3-time BCS champion in Alabama and 4th-round draft pick of the St. Louis Rams. What's up, Barrett?
What's up, Geoff? Glad to be here, man.
I'm glad to have you. We have wall-to-wall football today. We're going to talk about college football. We're going to talk about some fights today in the NFL. We're going to talk about some bad losses we've had, also some wins that we've won ugly, but we feel good about because we win no matter what. But first, we're going to start off with some NFL action today. You know, not a day where we had a Texans-Seahawks game, just a kind of a day of NFL football. Some blowouts, some close games, but maybe a little bit better understanding of the playoff picture at the end of Week 9 now. Philadelphia goes to 8-1 with a throttling of the Broncos, 51-23. The game was not even close. Carson Wentz, another big day for him with 4 touchdown passes. Here is Doug Peterson talking about Wentz's development.
He improves every single week, and you know, the guys around him really elevate their game. They I think we talk about this quite a bit with great quarterbacks and good quarterbacks that make the other guys really want to play at a high level, and that's what you're doing. It's a team effort. Obviously, offensively, offensive line has to protect, but he's doing a great job. He knows where everybody's going to be. He prepares so well each week, and it's fun to watch him when things are really clicking like that, and to see the guys having fun doing that.
The Eagles move to 8-1, best record in the NFL, obviously best record in the NFC. So I'll start here, Barrett. Do you think the Eagles are the best team in the NFL right now?
Well, let me first say that I played for the Eagles for a season. I was there when we drafted Carson Wentz, and I am totally on the Wentz wagon. I mean, this kid is special. I knew it when he first came in. I know, classic, I knew it. I don't know if I knew he'd be this good this quickly, but there's something different about this kid. Not only, obviously, he's a great football player, but he's an infectious leader. I mean, you talk to anybody there, it's tough for a rookie to lead. But when this kid came in, you should know how good the Eagles felt about him. The fact that they traded away Sam Bradford, felt like this was their guy even day one going forward. He has a huge impact on the people around him. Honestly, right now, I do think I think that the Eagles are the best team in football right this second. You look at what are their weaknesses. A lot of people have talked about secondary. They lost a linebacker, Jordan Hicks, last week, who's one of their better players. They got Ronald Darby back in the secondary this week. That'll help them down the stretch. They're not perfect. They have weaknesses, absolutely. The offensive line is very solid. The whole offense has really, really looked good. Obviously, if you're going to say anybody else, I'm going to 2 teams real fast. Obviously, the Patriots. Anytime, as long as Tom Brady's playing football, they're still very much in the conversation. But the team I want to keep an eye on is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another team that's a pretty complete football team. Really, the weak link this far so far this year has been Ben Roethlisberger. He's really played poorly. 9 interceptions on the season. Completion percentage is 61%. He's been kind of average this year, but there's just too much star power. The defense is playing well. Joe Hayden was a big addition to that secondary. So, I think the Eagles are the best team with those 2 teams nipping at their heels.
I want to go back to Carson Wentz for a second. Do you have a story maybe when he was drafted, when he first came into the OTAs, the offseason program, where you thought, like, this kid's a leader?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily a story because he's not necessarily like a big speech giver. I think it's just, and Geoff, there's certain guys when you're around them, you can just they just kind of exude confidence. And he's not he's probably one of the most humble guys I've ever been around, but he has this confidence about him that kind of inspires confidence in other people. Obviously, he's got the arm talent, he's got all that stuff, but there's something about this kid when he gets into the huddle. I remember the first time he was ever in the huddle with me, and even though he didn't know the playbook, he knew nothing, when he told you the play, it seemed like it was going to be successful. Just something about certain guys when they get in the huddle with you and they tell you what the play is going to be, it feels like it's going to work. And that's kind of the infectious leadership personality he has. And for whatever reason, when he talks, guys listen. He's not a yeller and screamer getting in guys' face. That's not really his style. He does lead. He does hold guys accountable. But for whatever reason, since day one, when this guy has talked, people have listened. Everyone listens to what he has to say. They respect him. They respect the way he works. I mean, he's really just kind of a country kid from North Dakota. Loves hunting, loves ball, loves to talk about football. He's really a simple guy. Not really flashy. Doesn't really like the lights or the media attention. Just loves studying football and loves playing the game and loves leading the guys.
Well, we'll say his enthusiasm that he showed when Jake Elliott kicked that ball, the 61-yarder, to beat the Giants, that showed me a lot of just how much he loves the game, like you mentioned. The love of the game, the enthusiasm, just kind of the wonder of still playing in the NFL. He made it, right? He's in the NFL as a franchise quarterback. So I just love the kid. I agree with you. I do some stuff for The Athletic in Philly, so I cover the Eagles a little bit, so I've watched a lot of their film, and I like where they're at with Wentz, with the wide receivers this year, with bringing in the J train, with Blunt playing the way he is with the offensive line. I just worry without Jason Peters, without Hicks, the depth has been tested, and quite honestly, they haven't played a lot of excellent quarterbacks. Right? Cousins, Alex Smith, Eli, Rivers, Carson Palmer, Cam Newton, Cousins again. Whoever the Niners tried out that game, I think it was 2 quarterbacks, and they played now Brock Osweiler. So that does worry me a little bit because I think it is important.
You don't think Brock Osweiler's legit, man? Come on.
Unfortunately,
Brock's a beast.
Not. He's a beast in 2015, but he's a beast because he's getting paid by 2 teams. Though that's very beastly. I'm very jealous of that.
That is impressive.
Here's the thing. I like your Steelers pick. Steelers defensively, while the offense might be struggling, defensively they're legit. 5th in yards per play, which is an important number, and 2nd in points. So the Steelers defense has gone back to what they used to be. They lost that a little bit. But to me, I've been kind of talking about this team for a couple weeks now. I wrote about them. The New Orleans Saints are 6-2. They've won 6 in a row. The last time an 0-2 team won 6 games in a row, both those teams, and have won the Super Bowl. One was the Cowboys, I believe. I don't have the other team off the top of my head. They are slowly starting to roll offensively, defensively. They've gotten a lot better since the first 2 weeks. And Geoff Saturday talked today, ESPN NFL analyst on SportsCenter, about why he likes New Orleans more than Philadelphia.
The way the Saints are playing offensively is very similar to the way the Eagles are. With Kamara, with Ingram, Peyton's reliance on the run game and the screen game, which I consider just an extension of the run game, has really opened up this Saints offense, and it's been sustainable drives, not just the big shots from Brees that we've seen in the past, right? And Drew Brees, he finds ways to keep drives going. It used to be the short passing game. Now he can hand it off. I think that, coupled with it, now your offense stays on the field, keeping the Eagles' defense on. That would be the way I would say that.
Well, I like that. Go ahead, Barrett. Go ahead.
I don't want to rain on your parade here, but let me just read you off who the Saints have beaten, okay, in this 6 straight. They beat the Panthers, which that looks like a good win now. But then they've beaten the Dolphins, the Lions, the Packers without Aaron Rodgers, the Bears, and the Bucks. Okay, I mean, 6 wins is great. That's impressive. I still think that defense is a problem. Drew Brees is awesome. I like the way their offense is playing, but I still think that defense is a problem. I don't think they'll be a serious threat in the playoffs because of it. You look at the Eagles, and you're right about them too. They've had an easier schedule as well. I'm very excited next week, that Sunday night game, Cowboys-Eagles. That's going to be a really good one right there.
It will, and we'll see. Zeke Elliott plays or doesn't play. Besides the appeal, what makes him special, and it's hard to explain this to people, and I'm sure I'll talk about it, you can maybe talk about this as well, is it's the little things he does in a game that might turn like a 2-yard gain into a 6-yard gain, or a 3-yard gain to a 9-yard gain. There was a play in today's game. It was a second down. They ran a little inside zone, and he's trying to run over the left guard, and there was a kind of a pile there, and he kind of quickly hopped over the pile, burst up the field, got about 7 yards. A lot of other guys just kind of fall down over that pile, and that's what makes him so special and so different. That's why the Cowboys need him to play this season if they want to make the playoffs.
No, I agree. He's a special player, and I think, just watching the Cowboys, they've been playing better lately. I think it's been a distraction. It hasn't been talked about that much as far as the element of distraction, but it's been a distraction, to this team. Just from watching them, they don't quite have the same smoothness they did last year. Again, they're getting there. They're developing it. They're getting better. They're improving. You just wonder how it's going to affect them if and when that Zeke suspension finally takes place, because you're right. Their offense will not be the same without him. He is an extremely special player. He does a lot of little things right out there. He's really a smart player, too, and just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, he is. And speaking of the Cowboys, defensively, though, they've gotten a lot better this year. You have DeMarcus Lawrence leading the NFL in sacks with 10.5. Today was the first day that he did not have a sack on the season. But, the Cowboys defensively, they have done so much, and Rod Marinelli has been fantastic. Getting the most out of his – until this year, the last couple of years, they did not have a game wrecker like Lawrence. They had Sean Lee, he bunch of tackles, but not a game wrecker. So watch the Cowboys play today. They dominated a really good Chiefs team. I know the Chiefs have kind of scuffled as of late, and I'm a big Chiefs fan. My brother plays for the Chiefs, but watch the Cowboys today. I mean, if they can somehow get Zeke Elliott to play the rest of the season, which I don't think it's possible. I think eventually he will get suspended. Roger Goodell, an NFL Article 46. They end up winning all these games. Winning all these court cases. But right now the Cowboys 5-3, last spot in the wild card right now. If they can get Zeke Elliott for the rest of the season, they can make a run as well.
No, I agree. I think the Cowboys are a team that we're going to see shoot out the power rankings. Absolutely, they've looked a lot better lately, and there's just too much talent on that football team. You look at it, there's talent everywhere. I think anytime, it's kind of that quarterback syndrome, kind of like the Seahawks had with Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick with the 49ers. When you don't have to pay your quarterback much money, you got a lot of extra cap space to get a lot of talent around you. There's so much talent on that football team because you got Dak Prescott, a top 10 quarterback, and you're paying him $600,000 a year or whatever. So I agree. The Cowboys are a team that I expect to be there in the playoffs when it's all said and done.
One team I want to get to will be the Rams. We'll talk about them later. They had another big win today, but like we've talked about with the Eagles and other teams, who they played, who knows. But coming up next, there are losses, and then there are bad losses. We'll explain next. It's the Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is the Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is the Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Tweet us at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at ESPN Radio. You can call us as well, 888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. The segment's brought to you by Upside.com. Low prices, great rewards, 6-star service. You deserve a better business trip. Upside.com. You heard that sound from Seattle, Washington at the Seahawks. Washington down 4 offensive linemen today, and Seattle still manages to lose this game. Unacceptable loss by Seattle. I think rather embarrassing for them to lose at home that way. Since Russell Wilson became the starting quarterback in Seattle heading into this game, the Seahawks are 37-6 at home with Russell Wilson as their starting quarterback. So this got us thinking about terrible losses we've had in our career. I went to Oregon, so I had some unfortunate college losses. Barrett went to Alabama. He did not. So the worst loss I had in college, we go up to Washington State. We play the Cougars when they're bad. They're better this year. They're better last year. They've gotten better since Mike Leach got there. We lose the game in terribly embarrassing fashion. 5 turnovers, just miserable. It's late November, too, so it's cold. It's just, you don't want to be in Pullman. So you drive from Pullman and you fly to Lewiston, which is about an hour and a half away in Idaho, and we get to the tarmac, and there's 2 airplanes on the tarmac. There's our airplane, and there's Boise State's airplane, who just played Idaho because Moscow, Idaho is right by Pullman. This is the only airport. So Boise gets on their plane. We get on our plane. Boise rolls off the tarmac. They take off. They go back to Boise. We start rolling off the tarmac, and we stop for a second. And all of a sudden, the jet engines go in reverse, which is actually not allowed, I do not think. Planes are not allowed to go in reverse. And that is because we got stuck in the mud as we rolled off the tarmac. We were stuck for 7 hours in Pullman. The flight from Pullman to Eugene is only 45 minutes, so we had no food on our airplane. They had to deplane the front half of the plane and put them in the terminal to get the plane light enough to pull it out of the mud. They had to drive down parts from Spokane to get us out of the mud. It took 7 hours, so we were supposed to leave about it was a noon game, so 4 o'clock. We didn't leave till about 2 o'clock in the morning. That was easily the worst loss, and then basically the worst thing that's ever happened post-loss to me in my entire career. I mean, that's embarrassing to lose to Washington State, and then that happened to us is just rather embarrassing. I know, Barrett, you've seen some bad losses before. I
have. That's an interesting Pac-12 tale you spun for us there. Sorry, you guys. I don't know. You said I don't like to be in Pullman when it's cold. I don't know. I can never think of a scenario. Anyway, I'm a Southern guy. I like it here in the South. It's nice and warm. But no, I do. So I call games on SEC Network, and this weekend I had a game that was almost one of the worst losses I've ever seen. I called the Arkansas versus Coastal Carolina game, which I know doesn't sound very exciting, but the Chanticleers, who won the baseball national championship a few years back, this is their first full season in FBS, 1-7 going into the game, 0-5 in the Sun Belt, and they're facing off against Arkansas. Not only that, their coach is out for the season on medical leave. Their quarterback got injured, so their backup quarterback was in. I mean, they had everything going against them. Had only won one game the entire season, and they were up 11 in the fourth quarter against Arkansas. And you're talking about some bad football. It was a bad showing. There were a lot of frustrated fans. It would have been one of the worst losses of all time. You might not even heard about it, but if they would have lost, you would have heard about it because it was absolutely terrible. Thankfully for the Arkansas fans, Cole Kelly and the Hogs were able to rally. But it was absolutely atrocious. But you're right, Geoff. Didn't have a whole lot of bad losses, to be honest, at Alabama. We did. Yeah, I know. Alabama fans are arrogant. I get it. Yeah, don't at me. But I guess we did lose to Johnny Manziel one time. That didn't feel good. But I don't know if that's a bad loss. So
when you lose to the Heisman winner, I don't think that's a bad loss.
Yeah, we lost to LSU once, but then
after a loss is not the same as a to my book, not the same as a bad loss.
I hear you. We lost to LSU once, but then we beat them in the championship the same year. So.
I'm so sorry for you. But coming up next, Marshall Newhouse of the Raiders, who had an interesting play tonight, will join us and talk about it, about it. It's Geoff Schwartz and Barrett Jones on The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. You just heard the Raiders go into Miami and win a football game. They go to 4-5 on the year. But, however, there was an offensive lineman who had an outstanding play for really all the wrong reasons tonight. It was incredible. That is Marshall Newhouse. We have Marshall Newhouse on the line. What's up, Marshall?
How's it going, man?
I'm good. So I'll take you through it real quick, and then I'm going to ask you how this went. So unfortunately, you allow a sack. The ball is fumbled. Most offensive linemen, most guys who are unathletic like myself, would have fallen on the ball. You pick up the ball. You run how many yards? 10 or so yards. You go to switch the ball to your other hand. You get hit. You do a John Elway helicopter, and you drop the ball, unfortunately. So take us through the play. What were you thinking as you picked up that football?
Well, I realized I just made giving up the sack, the strip sack, even though we had blocked the TE, the stunt well initially, and I let him get me off balance, and I see him strip Derek, and I'm like, oh, damn. So I go and I see the ball running loose, and I initially thought about jumping on it, but I saw a little bit of space, what felt like space, and I picked it up smoothly and was just kind of running and kind of blacked out. You know how fat guys are when we get the ball. It's not natural. So I kind of blacked out. I think it was Kiko Alonso came out of nowhere, speared me, and I slipped, and it was just terrible all around at that point. So I'm glad I made it out alive and not too banged up, but I was good, bad, and very bad at the end.
Marshall, Barrett Jones here. I'm also a former offensive lineman, and I think this is every offensive lineman's dream. I think there's been several times where I've dreamed about some scenario where you pick the ball up and, win the game for the team. Was there ever a moment when you had the ball in your hands? Like, I know it was a short time, really, but sometimes those moments are really slow in your head. Was there ever a moment where you just thought, hey, I'm about to be a hero? Did that cross your mind?
There's no way, because I was already the GOAT because I gave up the strip sack, so I was just trying to get back to even. Hero never crossed my mind. I was trying to make a bad play not as bad.
Dude, I've watched this play 100 times. It's legit laughter, and it's only because I love you. We played next to each other for an entire year in New York. So when you get to the locker room, you win the game. So that's obviously the joy of winning the football game. What do the coaches tell you after a play like that?
They were just asking me if I was all right. I laid down there. I needed to take a personal minute because I got flipped and I landed. That's a lot of weight coming down from the air, and I just needed a minute. They just asked me if I was okay, and I told them I was fine. I mean, I was hurting, but I'm fine. And then after the game, the coaches didn't really say anything. It was more my teammates who immediately went to the internet, and as we know, the internet moves really fast, and they had to just show me and everyone else and get their laughs in, and which I'm all good about as long as we win.
Marshall, last question for you. Heading into the bye, this team's now 4-5. You go across the country, get a win. How do you feel about the position you guys are in heading into the bye?
We haven't played our best football up to this point, but being 4-5 going into the second half of the season, we just know what's in front of us. We know we can catch fire. We have the weapons on offense and the playmakers on defense. We just got to put some wins together, and it started coming out here and beating the Miami team. We've been out on the East Coast for about 10 days now, so it was good to get the win. I'm going to get to go home, get some time off, and come back hopefully focused and ready to go on a run.
Well, thank you, Marshall, for joining us. Have a safe flight back to Oakland. Enjoy your bye week, and live this moment up, please.
I appreciate it. You need to quit laughing so hard, Geoff. I feel like you're laughing entirely too hard.
It's only because I love you, Marshall. So have a safe flight, bud.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Go ice that hip.
That was Marshall Newhouse of the victorious Oakland Raiders. If you have not seen that play, you can go on Twitter and search Marshall Newhouse. I love Marshall. I played next to him in New York. He's a great guy, and that's why he came on and could joke with us. Real quick, Barrett, you talked about the idea of things slowing down. I actually caught a pitch in college from Dennis Dixon. We had a busted play. Dennis was supposed to keep the ball and go to the left and have a pitch back after he kept on the read. Instead, he ran to the right. I was blocking my defensive end, Lawrence Jackson, and Lawrence kind of rolled his way back in the play. So I'm going to chase him, thinking that Dennis has kept the ball to the left. Instead, Dennis kept the ball to the right. He pitched it to me. I actually caught the ball, and I remember we had a wide receiver, number 21, Garrett Strong, was right in front of me. He looked at me, and his eyes were so wide. Like, I can't believe that Schwartz just caught the ball. And then, obviously, I tried to run, and it felt like I got a long distance, but I got 3 yards. Lawrence Jackson tripped me up for a 3-yard gain. It was remarkable. I have a clip of this, too. I will tweet it out. It's on YouTube. It's remarkable. It's a 3-yard gain. I was the third leading rusher that game when we finally beat USC.
I bet it was a heck of a 3-yard gain. It was probably one of the greatest 3-yard gains ever.
The most regal 3-yard gain. But now
well, I touched the ball one time in high school, and I was playing defensive end, drop back, zone blitz, jumped up, grabbed the ball, and I'm telling you, for a split second, I had it all drawn out in my head. I was going to run for a touchdown. I was going to be the hero of the game. We were playing our biggest rival. It was going to be awesome. And then as soon as I took one step, a guy came out and cut my legs out. So
get your knees up, man.
It felt awesome, but and like all I could see was tunnel vision to the end zone. Didn't happen. So
well, I know on mine, I just didn't see any tunnel vision at all. I was hoping to not fumble. But now we're going to do a segment called Talk About It, Been About It. All right, so we had 3 NFL fights today. We had A.J. Green and Jalen Ramsey. That was less of a fight and just A.J. Green getting really upset and punching Jalen Ramsey's face mask repeatedly, taking him down. I don't know why Ramsey got tossed, but A.J. Green obviously should have got tossed for that.
That was more of a fifth than a fight.
Yeah, it was more. Then we had in New Orleans, we had Jameis Winston getting in it with Lattimore, the rookie cornerback, and then Mike Evans decking Lattimore and them getting after it. We had one in San Francisco that wasn't as highly publicized. So fights happen in football. It's a physical game. It's an emotional game. I know, Barrett, you have a great story about a fight in football.
Yeah, fights happen a lot in football, Geoff, as you know, and particularly in the trenches. They're always a big part of what's going on. But probably my best fight story I have comes from a joint practice. So we were the worst. These are absolutely the worst. Ask any player about joint practices. They're always chippy. There's always fights that break out. So we had a 2-day joint practice session with the Dallas Cowboys. I was playing at the time for the St. Louis Rams. We were training up in Oxnard that year. We went up to Oxnard for a week to train there and then to have 2 joint practices against the Cowboys. I think, side note, it was also because we were trying to develop our fan base because everyone knew we were about to move. But anyway, so day 1 with the Cowboys, things go pretty well. We had a pretty good practice. But the coaches did not like the way that the Dallas defenders were hitting our running backs. It was a thud practice, which means you're not supposed to tackle. You're supposed to just hit and kind of wrap up. It was thud only. But we had a few linebackers that brought some of our running backs to the ground. So I'll never forget the team meeting the next day before practice number 2. Our coach, Jeff Fisher, looked at us and he said, guys, I want you to defend your guys out there. And then he winked at us. So everyone driving over to the stadium knew what was about to happen. And so sure enough,
fight.
Sure enough, we get into team drills. We're facing off against the Cowboys, and someone did something. I actually remember exactly. I'm pretty sure someone got cut. It's got their legs cut out from under them, and all of a sudden, a fight breaks out. And so you got to understand the setup here. I don't want to go too long, but the setup was there's 2 fields, right? So you got the offensive field. Both teams are running offense versus other teams even. So you got 2 fields, right? So I was on the offensive field at the time. it was my unit that was actually in the game, and I remember running over there and trying to kind of defend my guy. I was kind of which, by the way, Jeff, the thing you never do is stand around the fight. That's the no-no right there. So here I am like an idiot standing around the fight, trying to kind of pull a guy off, and I get my clock absolutely cleaned, right? And so I look up, and our entire defense had stopped the period over there and ran over from the defensive field to join in on the fight. It's actually hilarious on film. Tony Romo, in the middle of the play, the whole defense gets and runs off the field. So Tony Romo throws a touchdown pass because no defense is on the field. They all ran to join the fight. And next thing you know, there are 130 guys or whatever just fighting in this giant melee in the middle of the field. They had to cancel practice. They sent us home in the buses. It was wild, and we pretty much knew it was going to happen. So that was a great fight. Probably one of the most eventful. It was all over YouTube. It's probably still there. One of the most exciting fights I've ever been a part of.
I've never been in a big team brawl like that, but I'll tell you what, the best part of your story was practice got canceled. It was worth it, wasn't it?
Totally worth it. I mean, that was we were all like mission accomplished. I mean, it was great. I mean, that was we were all fired up.
There was a Hard Knocks episode, I think it was the Falcons, and they said they were joint practice against Tampa Bay, and they told the team, if you fight, you get thrown out. And the first play of team drills, the starting center fought someone, got tossed out of practice. And I was like, you go, guy, because you're starting center, you're not going to get benched for fighting, and you look tough, and now you get to miss the rest of the practice. God bless you.
Yeah, everyone wants their center to fight. You want your center to be a brawler. Don't listen to them. The coach will say
you have to be. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I agree.
The coaches love that stuff, and that's they might act like they don't, but there's a lot of wink going on in those practice fights because in public they'll act like they're mad, but then they'll say something like, "Hey, way to stick up for your guy." That's one you hear a lot. So it's part of football, right. And it's a fun part of football, frankly.
I totally agree with that. All right, coming up next, lame duck coaches in the NFL. We'll discuss this next on The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is the Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. So after 9 weeks, we get to this time of year now where we talk about coaching replacements. I know it's talked feverishly in college football right now as we've seen Florida and other programs start letting coaches go. But really in the NFL, we haven't had that time yet. But they're getting to the point now where we have some lame duck coaches, and we both had experiences, me and Barrett, with these lame duck coaches. So, just running down a list, my list, I think Tampa Bay is super underperforming. They're 2-6. Their offense is not going as planned. When you have Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans and O.J. Howard, you built up your offensive line. You have Doug Martin. You have Jameis Winston supposed to take the next step. You have Dirk Cutter as offensive head coach. Things just aren't going well. And then you add Dirk Cutter blaming Tampa Bay's culture essentially for that. I don't think that flies, and I think that he might see himself on the way out. John Fox with Chicago 3-5, and I don't know if they're going to keep him around with a rookie quarterback who needs an offensive-minded head coach. Think what Sean McVay did to the Rams. I think you're looking at Hugh Jackson. Look, I understand that they are in this rebuild mode, but now Hugh is 1-23 as a head coach for the Cleveland Browns. You have to win games at some point over the last year and a half, and they're almost getting worse week to week, which is not a sign of a coach I think that's going to stay very long. And they're slowly, you see the A.J. McCarron deal that fell through. It seems like that Hugh Jackson did that on his own without really the front office's approval, which is not good for the working relationship in Cleveland. I think you're looking at possibly Pagano in Indianapolis and Andrew Luck obviously sitting out the year. I could see an offensive-minded head coach going there. And then we get to one that is interesting to me in Ben McAdoo, the New York Giants head coach. He talked about his job security today after the game.
My situation doesn't have anything to do with it. We have to get ready to play a ball game next week. That's counterproductive.
It does reflect on you, correct?
Everything falls back on my shoulders.
The Giants made the playoffs last year, went 11-5, made the wild card, lost to the Packers. Now this year they're 1-7. They've had injury problems, right? They had Odell miss the start of the season. They had Odell miss many more games. They've had multiple wide receivers out, offensive linemen out, their starting centers out. They were down 4 defensive players today, but it's not really the losses. It's how they're losing. And so I wonder if McAdoo, coming off a playoff berth last year, ends up losing that job eventually. So Barrett, I know you've played. First of all, I'll start this. Do you like the list of lame duck coaches or coaches on the hot seat that I have provided?
I love the list, Geoff. I think it's a very accurate list. I think Ben McAdoo is a very interesting question. Obviously, like you said, made the playoffs last year. I think historically, when you look at the Giants, they're a team that is slow to fire a coach. They kept Coughlin around for more years. You know that. You play for the Giants.
Yeah.
They're not as reactionary as some organizations. They're very slow to. So I think he could hang around. But you look at the way they lost today. And look, I get it. The Rams, they're surging. We might get to that in a bit. They've been very impressive. Jared Goff, Sean McVay, a lot of credit to those guys and what they've been doing. But the way they lost that football game today, there was some quit on the field today. And you never want to say that. But watching that game, there was some quit on the field. And you wonder, there's been rumors about Janoris Jenkins and the fact that the team was upset he got suspended and, they were sending a signal. This is all conjecture. Who knows what really happened? All I know is that there's a lot of talent, particularly on the defensive side of that football, still left. I mean, Landon Collins, the guy I have a lot of respect for, played with.
He's really
good. He's had a good season. Even he's
the best tackling safety in the NFL.
He's awesome, and hard not putting any of the blame on him. He's great, particularly because
he went to Alabama.
He's a Bama guy. I'm never going to put blame on him for sure. But there's a lot of good players on that defense. You look at guys like Olivier Vernon and guys like Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who's kind of been up and down, I know, and Jason Pierre-Paul. There's a ton of star power on that defense, and for them to get embarrassed like that today by a second-year quarterback, that was embarrassing. So I guess what I'm saying is, is he definitely going to get fired? No, but they're going to have a little more style points. And then you talk about Tampa Bay. I think Dirk Cutter is almost certainly out unless we see something different.
Yes.
There was some major frustration. That fight to me said a lot. The way that Jameis, which first of all I have no idea what Jameis was doing. That was that was just a really stupid act that Jameis did today, poking the guy in the helmet, particularly when he's already injured. I really just didn't like the body language that conveyed. And then Mike Evans just comes over and cleans the guys. To me, that looked like a frustrated football team that just would that looked like they had more effort and energy in that fight than they did throughout the football game. So I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of turnover like there is every year. I think that was a good list. John Fox, that'll be a really interesting one because, obviously they drafted Trubisky. Will they give him time? I was in Chicago for a short while. I like John Fox. Will be very interesting to see. That is definitely the fad right now. The fad is to get an offensive-minded coach. That's what everybody wants. That's what the fan bases want. They want a high-flying offensive coach. They see a guy like Sean McVay come in and have success. And again, Sean McVay has had some major – I'm still shocked by the Rams. I am shocked. I really am shocked. I played for that team for 3 years. I am shocked by what I'm seeing in a good way. I mean, it's been absolutely incredible, the success they've had. So that's the dream. But the thing is, for every one Sean McVay, there's 4 or 5 cases where it doesn't work out like that. So you never know how it's going to go down. Even though the grass always seems greener, it's not always greener.
Quickly on two more coaches. Marvin Lewis, yes or no?
Marvin Lewis is out. I think this is finally the year he's out.
Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien is in. Deshaun Watson. They were having a good year before he left. I think they keep him.
Coming up next, we're going to get into your favorite topic, college football. More upsets this weekend on Saturday, and likely a lot of movement in the polls. We'll discuss next on The Locker Room on ESPN Radio.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Talk NFL. The first hour, we are now moving to college football. Barrett Jones's favorite subject to talk about. Can't wait to get his thoughts and opinions on this wild weekend. We had 2 major upsets. Number 6 Ohio State goes into Iowa and loses 55-24. We have Urban Meyer talking about what led to that loss.
Game just ended. Obviously turnovers. They controlled the line of scrimmage. We couldn't stop them. Good team, tough environment, didn't play very well. And turnovers, the game was tied at, even after we gave them a 7-point jump start there at the beginning of the game. We got the ball at midfield, and 2 offensive linemen went down with injuries, and then they came back eventually, but we weren't right since that moment. And one guy goes in and makes a mistake, allows a sack fumble, and disappointed we couldn't stop him, though, too.
Always the offensive line's fault. Now we move to another Big Ten upset. Number 7 Penn State at number 24 Michigan State. Michigan State wins 27-24. Another blow to the Big Ten chance in the playoff. Here is Penn State head coach James Franklin talking after the game about Penn State's maturity.
I would call us a young program in terms of the conversations that we've been a part of for the last 6 to 9 months, maybe a year, I guess you could call it. We're not mature enough to handle that, and I don't know if anybody is, to be honest with you. So we're going to get back to what I know works, our formula, and we're not talking about anything else.
Along the side of those 2 upsets, we actually had some big wins. Georgia beats South Carolina. Alabama takes down LSU. Congrats to Barrett Jones. Notre Dame beats Wake Forest. Clemson holds on to beat NC State. Oklahoma, by the way, there's a lot of points in this game. 62-52 in Bedlam over Oklahoma State. We had TCU won, Wisconsin won. Miami, big win over number 13 Virginia Tech. Auburn with a victory. Iowa State loses on the road to West Virginia. So we have our playoff picture getting a little muddied up. So, Barrett, what do you think about those 2 upsets?
Oh, Geoff, another fantastic week of college football. That's why I think college football is the best product out there right now. I love it. I love watching it. Can't get enough of it. Another great weekend. I've been saying all year I think the Big Ten is very overrated. I was finally vindicated this week. People asked me who I thought was better, Penn State or Ohio State. I said I don't think either are very good. I didn't think either would end up in the playoff. And now how right I was, because the Big Ten is a absolute dumpster fire now. Maybe not quite as much of a dumpster fire as your beloved Pac-12, but still a dumpster fire. Obviously, their one hope is now Wisconsin. But this talking about this Ohio State loss for a second. I mean, let's put it in perspective. Yes, Iowa, they win a lot of big games at home. They have a good win every year, But this is a team that lost to Northwestern early this season. I mean, they're not a great football team. This could be one of the worst losses, honestly, of Urban Meyer's career. I mean, with the talent he has on this football team, there is a ton of talent on that football team, and it's a bad loss. I mean, even going back to last week against Penn State, if you watch that football game, Ohio State was by far the more talented team in that game. But this team, for whatever reason, hasn't had it all year. They haven't played well. They haven't played to their potential. I think Urban Meyer is a fantastic coach, but for whatever reason, this rendition of the Ohio State Buckeyes has not had it. So now we enter into a time of questions. The top four will likely be unchanged: Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Clemson in some order. Possibly Oklahoma could clip Clemson. I doubt it personally, but that could happen. I still, maybe I'm old school, but when you give up 52 points, I don't think it's a good thing, no matter who it's to. But the really interesting thing, is going to be if the top four stays like it does right now, and Alabama and Georgia make it, which is another topic we can talk about in a second, and Notre Dame and Clemson, that would then leave 3 of the Power 5 conferences out. So, Geoff, I'm going to pose this question to you. If Wisconsin wins the Big Ten, let's just say that Alabama beats Georgia, and because, of course, that's going to be my simulation, and Notre Dame wins out, Clemson wins out, they're both probably in, and you come down to putting in the 4th team of Oklahoma with 1 loss, who just won the Big 12, the loser of the Alabama-Georgia game, or an undefeated Wisconsin Big Ten champion. Which of those is in, and which 2 do you leave out?
Well, to me, Wisconsin has not been impressive this season. They have won some close games when they shouldn't have. They played absolutely nobody. And even if they go undefeated, I think the committee has leaned towards strength of schedule as being important in deciding who makes the playoff. And I totally agree with that as well. And you look at a team like Georgia, and if Georgia runs the table and loses a close game to Alabama in the SEC championship game, to me, I don't see how you leave them out playing a schedule with SEC opponents frequently, right? And so that would be tough for me to leave out. But then you have Oklahoma, and I think Oklahoma can end up having a strong case, beating Ohio State, which will obviously drop, and that doesn't really look as good. But that was in Columbus, so that's a big win. Going to Bedlam, winning at Oklahoma State now 62-52 is quite remarkable with the amount of points that was scored in that game. And I agree with you. I mean, at some point, you have to play a little bit of defense, and we're both offensive guys, but we enjoy some form of defense. And now Oklahoma's going to have to go and play TCU next week, which will be a big game for them. If they can win that game, TCU is 8th, and they'll probably end up moving up. And then you end up with the Big 12 championship game, which will end up being most likely TCU or Oklahoma State again. So you add another big win to that. But to me, I think Georgia, the way they play defense, the way they can run the football, that feels like a team that would be in with 1 loss over a 1-loss Oklahoma team, because that loss was close to Alabama, who will be the number 1 seed if they end up beating Georgia in the SEC championship game. This segment, by the way, is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. So, Barrett, I'll flip that to you. If Alabama ends up losing to Georgia close in the SEC championship game as an undefeated team, are they in the playoff? Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I root for mayhem. I love mayhem. I think it's a lot of fun. I think this is exactly why they need to keep it a 4-team playoff, because this is what makes it so fun, is this mayhem, this discussion. I totally agree. You move it to 8 teams, and it's just now everybody gets in. And, part of the fun is all this argument. I mean, I just think it's such a blast to have this discussion. Obviously, there's a 99% chance that, everything is not going to work out just like we think it will. It never does. Things will change. Somebody will lose a game they shouldn't lose. Obviously, there's still a lot of teams on this schedule that have to play each other. You look at Miami right there, sitting at 8-0, still have to play Notre Dame and possibly Clemson in the ACC championship. So they kind of still control their own destiny. There's still so much that can happen. My personal belief, first of all, I'm an eye test guy. Okay, I go by my eyes. I trust them. I'm with you on that. I think the 4 best teams to me right now are Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Clemson. And honestly, I think it's
a relatively wide margin for me, because those are to me the only really 4 complete teams in college football. They can play offense and defense. Then you jump down to Oklahoma. That defense has been a train wreck at times this year. Almost lost to Baylor, who has yet to win a game. Oklahoma, Wisconsin, neither of us think they're very good. Miami, so. But all that being said, I still think that the committee, the fans, all the money that goes into it, they do not want to have 2 teams from the same conference. They'll never admit it. I really think that they're going to do everything in their power to not have 2 teams. So I think if you're faced with an undefeated, let's just say an undefeated Wisconsin versus a one-loss Georgia, Alabama, I think the committee would take Wisconsin. I don't think it's right. I think Georgia would be better than that, or a one-loss Alabama. But I do think, in fact, the committee would take an undefeated Wisconsin, the Big Ten champ, over either of those teams.
Coming up next, there is a team that could be a bracket buster, and we'll continue with the chaos in college football next on The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
So we're just talking about the crazy weekend in college football. Barrett loves the chaos. I love the chaos as well. It's fun to talk about. There's one team, though, that could be a bracket buster, and Heather Dinich, ESPN College Football Playoff Insider, talked about that team.
Auburn, because you look at a 2-loss team in the country, and I don't think there's one with a better opportunity to impress the selection committee down the stretch than Auburn, because they have Georgia and Alabama during the regular season, and then it would obviously be Georgia again in the SEC championship game. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and predict that that's going to happen, but if it did, Auburn could totally throw things completely out of whack and become the first 2-loss team in the college football playoff semifinals.
So we talked about this a little bit off air. What are the teams, Barrett, that you see, and Auburn was one of them that you mentioned, as possibly coming into this playoff? If you look at recent history, in 2014, Ohio State started at 16, ended up winning the championship. Oklahoma in 2015 started at 15th, ended up in the playoff as well. If you go down the years, you notice that this is a trend. There's a team that kind of comes out of nowhere to end up in the playoff. As you look at the playoff standings right now, which team do you like to maybe pop up in that top 4 by the time the season's over? Yeah,
obviously there's a lot of scenarios left to play out, and I think Auburn's a good one. They obviously control their own destiny, and I've been high on Auburn all year. I think they've, frankly, to a lot of SEC fans, been a little bit disappointing this year. I think they really have a lot of tools this year with a good offensive line, Jarrett Stidham, a pretty good quarterback, a really, really solid defense under Kevin Steele out there, the defensive coordinator. But for whatever reason, kind of haven't been able to pull it together in big moments. They watched that game early in the year against Clemson. The offense looked anemic, and then a really disappointing loss to LSU. That being said, in a way, they still do control their own destiny, like Heather Dinich just detailed. They still have a chance, obviously, playing Georgia and Alabama remaining on their schedule. If they were to win both of those games, they would go to the SEC championship. And it would not shock me, looking at the teams, if we saw a 2-loss team somewhere. I think some other to keep an eye on. I think TCU, we've kind of forgotten about them ever since their loss to Iowa State. They, in a way, still control their own destiny. Have Oklahoma this weekend coming up, which will be a fun game. If they were to win that game, then possibly face Oklahoma again in the Big 12 championship, that could vault them up. And then Miami, a team we talked about earlier. Miami faces off against Notre Dame, a game I'm very excited to see. Catholics versus convicts, another edition of that. That should be a fun one. There's definitely some other teams on the list. If you want a real dark horse, which I think would never happen, if total chaos emerged, UCF, Scott Frost and UCF. Yep. I don't think that'll ever happen, but it would be a lot of fun. So there's definitely a lot of questions we still have, a lot to sort out, some 2-loss teams on there that could possibly happen. But I'm going to let you talk about, Geoff. I know your favorite dark horse, so you think it might make the playoff. Go ahead.
Well, I despise Washington. They are Oregon's bitter rival. They just beat Oregon, in fact, 38-3 in a disgusting performance by my Ducks. We're
that's not a quality win anymore. Sorry, man. That's another notch on the belt.
Oh, I totally agree. Oregon's not very good. I'm just saying, in general, we don't want to lose to Washington. We beat them 12 years in a row before the last 2 seasons. I mean, to me, they still have to play a ranked Stanford team. They'll have to play in the Apple Cup against a Washington State team that'll be ranked, and they'll end up probably playing USC now in the Pac-12 championship game that will not be ranked. But you look at their schedule, and this is what's hurt them when they come out with the first playoff standings and they're out of the top 10 is you have your non-conferences at Rutgers, Montana, Fresno. That's not a schedule that really invites people to want to vote for you. And they lost to Arizona State, and the way they lost, and you talk about the eye test, and this is I think important in this case. And they lost to Arizona State 13-7. That's embarrassing, right? Arizona State plays no defense. This is the Pac-12. The one team that actually plays defense is Washington. They have a great points against the points for spread. I mean, they can play some defense, and to go to Arizona State and lose that game, that's worse than almost any other loss that a team in their position would have. One of these one-loss teams to go to Arizona State and lose that game. So, there has to be a lot of mayhem. Obviously, Miami's going to have to lose. Notre Dame's going to have to lose again. Georgia and Alabama, might have to lose a game here and there. I mean, there's a lot. TCU's got to lose a game. There's a lot that has to happen for Washington to eventually get in. But I like the Auburn case. Do you think they take at any point take a 2-loss team over a 1-loss team?
Ooh, obviously, depending on the scenario, I think it definitely could happen. I think it would have to be a conference champion at some point. It would have to be like a Clemson if they lost another game, and then taking them over. A team like possibly Wisconsin, or that'd be interesting to see over a 1-loss SEC team. I think a 1-loss SEC team would go over them, but there's going to be a lot. Again, I think that if there's one game I want to watch coming up this weekend, obviously TCU Oklahoma is a good game. It's that Miami Notre Dame game, because I want to figure out who Miami is, right? Miami, they really haven't played anybody either. They have some good players. They have won some games close. A lot of people think they aren't that good. I really don't know, and continue to kind of find out who Notre Dame is. So that's the game I'm probably the most excited about, and that's the fun thing about it all, is that so many of these questions we have now, are eventually going to sort themselves out. But if I could pick one game to watch, that's the one I want to watch. And then, hey, Wisconsin. Hey, they play Iowa team, an Iowa team that's obviously really hot, coming off a 30-point win. So there's going to be some questions answered this season. So I just can't wait, though, Geoff. I'm giddy and excited just talking about it. The college football that we have coming up, it's the best time. It's the best time of the year. It's fantastic. College football never ceases to amaze and be fun. So looking forward to the rest of the season.
Real quickly, Georgia, Auburn. Who do you think takes that one?
I think Georgia's going to take it. I think Georgia's for real. That defense is legit. I think they'll win that game by 10 points.
Well, coming up next, does your team have a lame duck coach that you want fired? Let us know. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. It's The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
We're back on The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. You can call us at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Before we get back into our lame duck NFL coach conversation, we're going to talk about some lame duck coaches in college with Jason, listening in Arkansas on 103.7. Welcome in, Jason. What's up?
Hi, fellas. How are y'all this evening?
Great.
Fantastic.
Man, first of all, I want to preface this by saying that I really do like this guy, but I don't think he's a good coach, and that is Brett Bielema for the Arkansas Razorbacks. I know that one of you had the pleasure of calling the game the other day, and, man, it just at this point it's just complete apathy for the fan base. It's no longer a hopeful, well, we'll be better next year. It's not a hopeful, well, we'll be better next week. It's a when are things going to change? And I wish him all the best, but, man, I'm just ready to see someone different. Y'all have a good evening.
No, I think you're right. I called the game this weekend, and there was a lot of apathy in the stands. And I like Brett. I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a guy who doesn't like Brett Bielema. He's an extremely likable guy, but something something may have to give after what happened this weekend, because that was an absolute embarrassment. You're right. The way they played, being down 11 to a 1-7 football team, and not just any 1-7, Coastal Carolina, for whatever reason, just hasn't worked. And when they hired Brett Bielema, I thought it was a great fit, honestly. I really thought it was going to be I thought they were going to have kind of a smash-mouth run game, but the stat that I always go back to is you're a smash-mouth run-first team, and this year they've averaged 4.2 yards per carry, 3.9 yards per carry in the SEC, and on top of that, they've given up 5.6 yards per carry. That's not going to get it done for Brett Bielema if that's what you're building your team on. Not going to happen. So, hate to see it, but I think he's probably gone.
What has gone wrong for Bielema? I thought he would actually do well coming from Wisconsin, going to Arkansas.
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, it's a combination of things. I think recruiting, the last few years it hasn't gone very well. He's had some untimely injuries. They've been bitten by the injury bug this year. Lost their top passer, their top rusher, their top offensive lineman. They've lost some guys, but I don't know. I looked at this roster and you just don't see it talent-wise. I don't think they're really able to compete at a high level for whatever reason. Defensively, they've just been an absolute train wreck. So I don't know. I think core principle-wise, they would love to run the football. Just for whatever reason, they haven't had the personnel to do it. They haven't been able to get it done.
We have Joe, who's calling also about Bielema, and someone else listening in Arkansas as well on 96.3. Joe, how do you feel about the Arkansas coaching situation?
It's terrible. To be basic, I mean, honestly, we need to hold on to him to the end of the year because it would be ridiculous to fire him now. But, I mean, it's just when you brought it up to recruiting, when you got to recruit against Alabama and LSU and you're playing run, smash mouth, play defense football, you just can't recruit. And especially in Arkansas. I mean, I hate to say it. When I love
Joe,
him,
let me ask you a question, Joe. What as an Arkansas fan, this is an honest question. What is success for you guys right now? Being in the West, the toughest division in football, when you bring a new coach in, what do you want to see from that coach?
I just want bowl games would be just fantastic. I mean, I'm not expecting him to come out the gates. I gave Bielema a chance. I didn't like him. I honestly didn't like the hire, to be honest with you. But he started off the gates. I was, impressed a little bit, but realistically, shooting for bowl games is, top of the list. And just right now, I don't even trust the AD. So that's the other guy I was talking about. I'd like to see gone is Jeff Long.
Wow. That's tough, Joe. Bowl games. If that's what you're dreaming of, is bowl games. That's a sad place to be, honestly. I mean, I hate that for you guys, that bowl games. I mean, you would think in the SEC West, Arkansas is a proud program. I mean, 9 or 10 wins I don't think is unreasonable. Obviously, with the way it is right now, you never know. But I know you guys are down in the dumps, but I think you can aim higher than bowl games.
So there are other guys that, as we spin around the SEC, we've talked a little bit about this. Obviously, Florida's out of head coach. We assume Tennessee will be out of head coach, right, Barrett?
Yeah, there's you look at it right now, there's, I think, 7 schools in the SEC that could lose their head coach. It's honestly an unprecedented run on head coaches. Obviously, nothing's happened for sure. Jim McElwain's already out, which that's something I could spend a whole segment on. Love Jim McElwain. He's a great guy. Odom could be out at Missouri. Butch Jones almost certainly out. This one will shock you guys, but if you're in the South, there's been some Gus Malzahn rumors. If Gus were to have lost that game, and even still if Gus loses to Georgia and Alabama by a significant margin, don't be shocked if something happens. I've even heard rumors about Gus going to Arkansas. So you got that. Then you got Kevin Sumlin at A&M. Ole Miss, almost certainly Matt Luke will be out. And then Arkansas with Brett Bielema. So a lot left to happen in the coaching carousel in the SEC. A lot that's going to happen. Jimmy Sexton will be very busy hiring new coaches and refining replacements. A lot of storylines there, but should be an interesting year. Always is. And, I think looking at the SEC, which, sorry if you aren't an SEC fan, but, I work for SEC Network, so deal with it. a lot of people say Nick Saban has ruined the SEC, and I think it is. I don't think that, but their point is just that it is so tough to win right now in the SEC. Alabama obviously has set a standard that's made it really tough, and that's why part of the reason why we're seeing so much change go on. So I don't know. It's really the SEC needs kind of some new blood, I think, in the coaching tree, and they'll get it after the season.
You're listening to The Locker Room on ESPN Radio, and ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive is celebrating 5 years and more than 500 cars donated to vets. To learn more, visit keys2progress.com. So if you look at all these coach openings, is Florida the best job that will be open?
Yeah, I still think Florida's the best job, and particularly with the timing, the way all that happened, I think they'll get kind of the pick of the litter. And you obviously look at different candidates. So there's been a lot of Scott Frost rumors, and there's also been a lot of rumors that Dan Mullen, a guy who's having a great year for Mississippi State standards, would possibly be open to possibly finding a bigger job, maybe at Florida. He's obviously a guy who was an offensive coordinator there. Coach Tim Tebow, a fantastic quarterback coach. I think if you're looking for a guy who can coach quarterbacks, Dan Mullen might be one of the best. So there's a lot of rumors about different names out there. Chip Kelly, who knows? He's in the mix. Tennessee fans, think they're either going to get Chip Kelly or John Gruden. So I don't know if that'll happen. But
John Gruden is not coming back to college.
No, I agree. I don't think that'll happen. And, there's all kind of rumors. It'll be interesting to see where it all settles. There's a local thing that a lot of people, Mike Norvell's been a hot name, the coach of Memphis. Some people say, he has Arkansas roots, went to Central Arkansas. A lot of people want to see him in Arkansas. So it'll be interesting to see where all the dominoes fall. But I do think Florida is still, with the way that university is set up, the support it has, the money and the program, to me, that's still the best job out there right now, particularly with the timing. I think that they'll kind of get the pick of the litter, and the dominoes will start to fall based on what happens at Georgia. But, again, another good one. I don't know. I think it's not quite as good of a job as they think it is, but they do have a lot of money as A&M. A&M could hire somebody like a Chip Kelly. They've got the cash to do it if someone goes. It wouldn't shock me to watch them try to make it kind of a big-name hire, go out there, grab somebody with a bunch of cash. So who knows what will happen, but I think there'll be a lot of new coaches in the SEC come next season.
Turning our attention back to the NFL and our conversation about NFL lame duck head coaches, not as many as SEC, but we have Kevin on the line from Arkansas. Kevin, who is your lame duck NFL head coach?
I was telling the gentleman over the phone who kind of interviewed me that you both kind of hit on the two that are the obvious ones. And I think the Giants head coach for sure. I mean, I personally, preseason, everyone had the Giants winning the East, and I didn't understand it. All these analysts, I'm like, where is this coming from? I thought they'd be right where they are in Go ahead.
I did not have them, so just throw it out there.
Good. Well, I mean, on my TV, I don't do a lot of radio sports listening, but you guys are good. I'm enjoying the show. Either way, I had the Giants in last in the East, but not by this much. I mean, it is really, really ridiculous, especially when you got a quarterback who clearly, I'm not saying Eli is all that, and he hasn't been all that for a while, but at what point are you going to make a change in the offense to sort of cater more to him? And then also, I mean, Marvin Lewis for the Bengals, I mean, at what point you've got so much talent there and you've had it for such a long time, and yet just zero progression. But to sort of to come out on a different note, I had a question for you guys, and it kind of pertains to lame duck. But I want to know AFC, NFC, biggest surprise, and biggest disappointment. In other words, if you got to put your money on three teams, and you got to say, I'm disappointed in these three, each league, where are you at? I mean, I think obviously in AFC, I've got to go Patriots, Steelers, and then the third is just getting really, really hard at this point. So
might have lost him right there. So, Barrett, really quickly, what are your, NFL? Give me one surprise and one disappointment.
Well, I mean, I think to me the Bengals. He hit on it. The Bengals are a big disappointment. I think the Bengals. You look at them. I agree they do have a lot of talent. Marvin Lewis. I think this could be his last season. I also think the Broncos off to a hot start, but they've really been disappointing. Surprise-wise, tough to say. He's got to go with the Eagles. I mean, I know that's obvious, but my biggest surprise has to be the Rams. The Rams have absolutely shocked me the way they've come out, the manner in which I know, again, the Giants aren't very good, but the way they won that game today and just the way they've looked so competent. Again, this is a team I've watched just about every single one of their games in the last 5 years. They have had times where they looked completely incompetent on offense. That was not the case lately because they have looked awesome. So that's got to be my biggest surprise. What about you, Geoff?
Well, I agree with you, but I'd throw one other. Jacksonville Jaguars, 5-3 with Blake Bortles. Remarkable. And disappointment for me, I talked about this earlier, Tampa Bay, and that's why I think Dirk Cutter will be on the hot seat. On the flip side, don't forget to cast your vote for Sunday's top performer. Go to Twitter, at ESPN Radio. We'll reveal the winner next and look ahead to tomorrow's Packers-Lions Monday Night Football matchup on The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Carson Wentz was your Sunday's top performer. Carson Wentz had a great day leading the Eagles to a 51-23 win over the Broncos. He was 15 of 27 for 199 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's rolling right now. I know people have talked about him being this hot quarterback off to a hot start. I think, Barrett, you agree with me. This is more than just a hot start.
No, I definitely agree with you. We've talked about it earlier in the show. I think Carson Wentz is the real deal. I played with him for a year in Philly. He's got an infectious personality. He's a leader. If you asked me one first or second year guy right now that I want to build a franchise around, I'm taking Carson Wentz. By a nose over Deshaun Watson, probably. A small sample size, but I'm taking Carson Wentz. I think he's the guy I want to build a franchise around right now, first or second year guy.
Real quick, on Deshaun Watson, man, I was so disappointed to see him get hurt. I was told that it's been reported now that he had a zone read, he pulled it out, was running an open field, open space, and just tore his ACL. I mean, he was crushing. I even had a video that's supposed to come out Friday morning on Deshaun Watson. We made the video Thursday at 4:00. He tears his ACL. Video can't come out. What he did this year in that offense, the play action pass, being able to do both. I didn't think he transitioned quite the way he did. I was very impressed. And Houston did a good job of tailoring the offense to his skill set. A lot of play action pass, which is what he did at Clemson. So his footwork is clean. It's a couple reads in play action, right? Really a high-low read. Things open up when you can run the ball, right? Earl Thomas is looking in the backfield for all that action. He's trying to cover for linebackers, and boop, there goes Hopkins or Fuller behind him for touchdown. So I love what Watson was doing, and I was sad to really see him go down.
No, I was too. I agree. I be honest, I expected Watson to be pretty good. I got to see him up close and personal 2 years in a row. Called both of those national championship games against Alabama on the sidelines, and I saw just how special of a player he was. And so I said I thought he should have been the number one pick. I cannot believe the Browns passed on him and Carson Wentz. That's really the story, is that Browns passed on both of those guys. But those are my top two right now. Starting a franchise, first or second year guy, that's who I picked. Those two guys in that order.
As we wrap up the weekend of football and we head into Monday Night Football tomorrow night, what was one thing that stood out to you? College, NFL, what's the one thing that stood out to you this weekend?
My favorite thing of the weekend had to be James Franklin. So if you didn't see it, it's a great video. James Franklin, after they just lost a soul-crushing loss to Michigan State, one of his players was trying to walk off the field without shaking hands, and James Franklin sprinted. Look, it looked like about 50 yards in the video to his player and had a panicked look on his face, and like saying, no, 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 and went over there to his player, grabbed him, and pointed, and he said, "You go shake hands." I loved it. I think that's part of what makes college so great, the sportsmanship. You got to give James Franklin a lot of credit right there. a moment where I'm sure he was hurting like the rest of the guys. His team was hurting, but he taught that kid a lesson that was more important right there in that moment, taught that kid to go shake hands. Some people will say, shaking hands is overrated. I disagree. I thought it was an awesome gesture. Loved seeing it. I think if James Franklin does stuff like that they'll be successful.
And here is James Franklin explaining that moment after the game.
And don't misinterpret us at the end of the game that I was running off the field. I would never do that. I saw a few of our players running off the field and not going to shake hands. And we are going to win with class, and we are going to lose with class. And we are going to shake people's hands and give them credit because they deserved it.
I do think it's important in college sports to show that sportsmanship. Obviously, I think when you get to NFL, things are a little different. I would always try to shake my opponent's hand. I think it's a sign of respect. You battle for 3 hours against somebody, win, lose, draw, play well, don't play well. I think it's important to acknowledge and respect your opponent.
No, I'm with you. I agree, and I think what happens on the field is one thing, but after the game's over, you go and you look the guy in the eye and you shake his hand, and that's part of what makes our sport great.
I agree with that. So my one big thing, and it was a small thing, but I think it shows Jacksonville's on the right track. So Tom Coughlin is executive vice president, and I know he probably has more influence than Doug Marrone, the head coach, wants. So a lot of the actions that happen in Jacksonville, I just assume really are Tom Coughlin kind of getting involved here. But Leonard Fournette was deactivated today for missing the team photo, which might sound odd to people. Well, it's just a team photo. But I will go ahead and assume that this is not the first time that he has been late to anything. And if you know Tom Coughlin, he wants you to be 5 minutes early to everything. The clocks in the facility are set forward 5 minutes. So if your cell phone says it's 8 o'clock, the clock in the facility will say 8:05. And I think it's okay that he is a stickler for those rules. And if you choose to break those rules and you choose to repeatedly break those rules, then you will get punished. And this is a way for him to show discipline on the team. And I actually like this.
No, I like it too. I think the Cleveland Browns should take a page out of that playbook of how to rebuild. Jacksonville's done a great job, and I like the move.
Thanks for listening to the Locker Room Podcast. Make sure to subscribe by clicking the Listen tab on the ESPN app.